Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Continuing our run through of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Right now we're up to the episode called Dr. Bashir, I Presume. It is the 16th episode of the 5th season, aired on February 24th, 1997. Teleplay goes to Ronald D. Moore, story credit goes to Jimmy Diggs, and directed by David Livingston. In this episode, Dr. Louis Zimmerman arrives on DS9 to use Bashir as the model for his new long-term medical hologram, but his plans could unveil a dark secret that Bashir has carried since childhood. We're joined by Clay, as always. Clay, how are you?
I'm good. Man, are all the doctors in Starfleet now just, love hounds? Because, man, the Robert Picardo doctor, he moves fast. He went from, hey, how's it going, to, do you want to leave here, come home with me, and live in my house?
Pack your bags.
After, one date.
I know, Eddie Money over the Eddie Money's 2 Tickets to Paradise playing in the background.
Did you catch at the end when he chases off after that other girl, he asks her if she's ever read the Kama Sutra?
One of the outtakes from the episode is he asks that woman at the very end when he runs off, he says, "Have you seen my work on Star Trek Voyager?" Which had made everyone laugh, apparently, when he said that. But
oh, really? That's funny.
You're familiar. He's the doctor on Voyager, right?
Yeah.
The hologram, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the doctor from First Contact.
That's right. Yes, he is. He's the medical program in First Contact. That's right.
And he is usually under makeup. He is a very prolific makeup wearer, I guess. I don't know what the word you would say. He's in a lot of horror movies and stuff as monsters and stuff. He's kind of like Doug Jones for the 80s. Oh,
interesting. Well, what's a movie he's been in? Because I think his voice is so distinctive that I would...
Yeah, it is. He worked with Joe Dante a lot. He was in The Howling. He plays one of the werewolves in The Howling. If you've ever seen Legend, the Tom Cruise movie, he plays this massive bog monster in Legend.
Oh, interesting.
So he pops up with various prosthetics on fairly frequently in the 80s.
Well, now we're going to talk about his turn as Louis Zimmerman on this DS9 episode. It's called Dr. Bashir, I Presume. We're going to take a break, play an audio clip, and then we're going to come back and break it down.
I can't believe you set them up like that.
We didn't set them up. They just happened to walk in while the program was running. Zimmerman thought it would be a good idea to test the program's ability to cope with an unexpected situation.
And you let them go on? You let them stand there and make fools of themselves while the two of you sat in the back room and laughed?
Look, I'm sorry about this. I wish it had never happened. But it has, and now we've got a problem.
I don't want to talk about it.
Julian, Zimmerman is going to file a report saying that Dr. Bashir is unsuitable for computer modeling because of his suspected genetically enhanced background. You know what's going to happen when that report gets back to Starfleet Medical?
All right, so after the doubleheader of In Purgatory Shadow and By Inferno's Light, we have another little come-down episode, as the show is wont to do after it does its two-parters. It usually does a small thing. You're going to find for the next couple episodes, it's actually as if nothing had ever happened in Purgatory Shadow and By Inferno's Light. They kind of forget about the Dominion for a little bit, so we're just going to have some character work and smaller stories. This is the first one, Dr. Bashir, I presume, where they totally retcon the Dr. Julian Bashir. And I suppose we move forward with the Rom and Alita romance. But those are the few things I wanted to talk about. The genetic manipulation of Dr. Bashir, the Rom and Alita storyline, and then I think that's pretty much it for that episode. It's a pretty simple episode. So where do you want to start, Clay? Do we want the meat and potatoes, or do we want to start with the lighthearted fun of Rom and Lita?
Let's start with the lighthearted fun.
It's a pretty terrible storyline for these two.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's like the closest thing I guess you could have on Star Trek to a workplace romance. More in a traditional vein than, say, the Worf and Dax sort of thing. But this is very, we just covered Cheers, and they have a very condensed Sam and Diane kind of thing. Only except if it was Sam was kind of seemed mentally deficient, and they both really liked each other, but just didn't say anything. It's what I don't know. I don't know if I thought it was fine.
Yeah,
it was whatever. It's I guess they've laid the seeds a little bit for this previously, but not so much that I remembered it. I kind of thought it came out of nowhere. But yeah, sure, whatever. Why not?
I mean, I think
Lita. I mean, at the very least, Lita does not have a type. I guess let's put it that way. No,
she doesn't. She'll go with any balding or horribly grotesque troll monster that may cross her path. And I think it's
Are you referencing Dr. Bashir in that instance?
I think the problem with this one is that it's. Do you remember the episode where I think it was Crossfire, where Odo sort of has his pining for Kira episode? We thought it was very good. It was like 5 out of 5.
Yes,
but we talked about in that episode how his relationship and the way that he was reacting to Kira was a very sort of like high schooly young male way of going about things. Mm-hmm. I think it's the same with this one. This is like, if you were to really think about what's going on here in the absence of any kind of story or narrative that these two have between them, it's really like a young nerd's fantasy about how a relationship would come about. Mm-hmm. And I think that Dax and Worf are unique because Dax and Worf feel to me like they're written by real people who potentially are also adults on some level. Yes. Yeah. And the Rom and Lita stuff is played off as kind of like, it's supposed to be lighthearted and fun, but it's neither funny nor interesting. And it just ends up putting Lita in this place where Lita comes across as like this real airhead character who's just like got a giant set of tits and is waiting for some man to come along and sweep her off her feet. And on the Rom side, it's the nerdy, nebbish male fantasy of like, I'm never going to say anything to her, but I know she wants me. All that it takes is for me to acknowledge her, and then she's going to want me immediately. And that's how it resolves. And it's kind of, it's pretty, some people would say that you're overthinking it and that's just harmless and goofy, but I think it's just kind of lazy and cliche, I guess, and it's not really interesting.
Yeah, it's like light sitcom writing. And I would agree that it doesn't really paint Lita with a very favorable brush, because she is taken by very little, where she's clearly interested in Rom, but she's not doing anything. And then when Zimmerman's like, I brought you flowers, she's like, did you do this to impress me? Because it is working. Mm-hmm.
Here goes my towel.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be, kind of lighthearted, like you're saying, but it doesn't paint her in a very, very very good light.
Yeah.
Not that it paints her in an actively negative light either, because I mean, she's just doing whatever. But she's not. I would agree. I think the whole thing is fairly adolescent in its portrayal on both sides.
Yeah, and I think it would be. It's just for how much time it takes up. It's really just, it feels like kind of a silly thing to go through. Like those two getting together, I would have accepted. And they sort of like, he just comes up and says that at the opening of the episode, Rom is like, oh, well, now I'm dating Lita or whatever. And I'd be like, that's fine, whatever. I don't need to see the courtip process going on between these two. And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to say, is Lita supposed to be like this beta version of a beta test version of like a sex positive character on Star Trek or something? Because it seems like I could see them confusing her actions as just being like not really caring about the general mores of dating and stuff. Because like the last time that we really saw her was on the Sex Planet episode where she and Bashir were breaking up.
Oh right, yeah.
And like the whole custom, is it just the Bajorans custom that you just kind of like hang out and have a key party at the end of your relationship or something?
Yeah, you celebrate the end of your relationship and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like very progressive and non-confrontational. So I was wondering, maybe they were trying to go for that angle, like she has a certain talk about overthinking it now. She has a certain viewpoint of relationships and all that kind of stuff, but at the same time, she for having the end of the relationship be something as progressive as let's go on a vacation and celebrate the end of our relationship and just hook up with a bunch of people and have a good time. The beginning of it is she can't even talk to Rom.
Right.
And like, cause I mean, she's into him clearly, but she's doing the old, he never makes a move. So I'm just going to look somewhere else kind of thing. And it's like, well, you know, there is another side to that coin if you decide to choose it.
Yeah.
You could talk to him yourself.
And maybe that'll tie into, I think this is an episode in general that really feels kind of dated at this point. Maybe it's the female not pursuing the male thing. Although I still don't know how much of that has taken hold. I would wonder what like young people's experience is with that. I would still imagine it's mostly a male initiated thing, maybe for good and for bad, I suppose. But
well, what's the, we'll click into old man mode here for a second. Isn't there a dating app? Was it Bumble, I think, where you basically, the women get to do all the choosing.
Oh, so like men are just lined up for the choosing and the women do it? It's
better than that. Like my friend of mine who was using it described it in a way that I was like, oh man, that sounds great as far as internet dating goes. Because what I understand about internet dating is it's a lot of awful messages.
Mm-hmm. Or swipe right. I've never used Tinder, but I just know people swipe rights or whatever.
Bumble is something like it gives all of the power of receiving messages or who gets to talk to you or who you're talking to the woman.
I see.
I don't know why. Why did I come up with that? Why? I'm old. Get off my lawn.
Which of these remotes works the volume?
Oh boy, rare form today.
I think that it comes across as it's a dated episode because of that holdover, and I think that like it'll tie into the Bashir thing too, where I think it's a little bit dated. But I don't think Lita is supposed to be sex positive. I'm always a little bit confused about what Lita's makeup is supposed to be, because she talks to Quark about how she's intelligent and everything like that, and he has the kind of funny line about like, go show the patrons your brains or whatever, they can get a good look at your brains. And she's not super smart or anything. She seems capable in some of the episodes that come across, but it's just they're two characters that I don't really feel that they ever need to spend a whole lot of time with in a storyline. Rom works as like a sort of supplemental character to a main storyline, but seeing him on his own is not anything exciting or to get worked up about.
And they also do her a disservice too, because when Zimmerman's like, you want to come home with me and you can run this coffee shop? Yeah. She's like, run a coffee shop? I barely know how to wait tables. Right. It's like, well, I mean, I don't think you had to take her down that far, because she kind of comes across as kind of a ditz, which is unfair, I think.
And Zimmerman's got some cachet to throw around about it's Zimmerman talking to whoever owns that bar. They're just like, fine, whatever, who cares, just bring them on in.
Now that's I mean, not that this kind of thing was ever good, but it's they're really playing Zimmerman playing the power card in this relationship in a very lighthearted way, which I don't think would fly in a show like this anymore.
Well, do you think? I think he's not aggressive with her, I guess, which is the failsafe, and he gives up at the end. So it's really more the fact that he does have a power hold over her, but it's more she's so ill-defined by what she wants that she's just very kind of like, you know, traipsing through the breeze in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It would be he's not being aggressive, but at the same time, what he's offering her is basically like, I'll give you a job if you come sleep with me at my house.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
So it would have been nice if instead of like, oh, guy I just met, I have to think about this before I uproot my life and go off with someone who I don't know and essentially be their indentured wife. It would be nice if she was like, first of all, go fuck yourself. Second of all, I'll take the job, but I'm not living at your house.
It's the joke.
Or something a little bit more. Yeah, something a little bit more empowered.
Is when Job is talking to Stan Sitwell, fuck you, and then I accept it.
Guess what? You're living in fuck city.
So I think that the data thing will kind of tie into the Dr. Bashir section, and I think this is as good a place as any to go into it, because what's funny to me about Star Trek is Star Trek has a real problem with genetic manipulation in a way that I think feels very 90s and kind of dated at this point.
So it's just around the time that they cloned the sheep.
Yes,
right?
Dolly made her double and everything.
Yes.
But what's funny, or the way that Star Trek treats it, Star Trek kind of has an in-canon out, because Khan, and they do bring up Khan in this episode, was a genetically altered person, and he caused World War III, basically. Mm-hmm. So it does make sense that they would be hesitant to do this in universe. However, the problem with this episode is I think it has a really good idea that it spends 35 minutes not talking about that idea, and then it crams everything into the last 15 minutes of the episode. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff here that I think is interesting. I don't know. It doesn't really negatively impact me about Dr. Bashir or what went on and everything. This is kind of a turning point for the character. He's different after this because this is always going to be a part of his character going forward. But
is this why he decided to not be good at tennis?
Yes. There's a whole bunch of... I mean, let's start there with the Bashir thing. Do you think this retcon works based on everything you've known about him?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think it's a incidental enough change that I don't think it really shakes anything up.
Right. And I think that I don't think it shakes...
I think it makes him more interesting, frankly. I don't know. Well, more interesting in that, like... I don't know. Like, so you're saying this comes up again up in the future?
Well, this is always going to be a part of his genetically enhanced intelligence is always kind of a thing going forward.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't think it's that big of it. I guess I'm conflicted about it because I don't think it's that big of a change, but at the same time, it's not really like they didn't turn him into friggin' a master scientist. He's just like, he's never really expressed previously that he's like this,
Superman,
alpha level genius or anything. He's just a doctor who's pretty good at his job. Maybe that's why when he was talking about himself as a kid, he was like, I was a dumb ass with cognitive problems that I don't even like talking about, to the point where I was more or less non-functional. That's
the funny thing about the episode is that they're like, genetic manipulation is wrong and everything, except for in extreme cases. And I was like, well, judging by how Dr. Bashir described himself, he seems like he was brain dead at the age of 6, where he could not tell the difference between a cat and a dog, or a tree and a house. It's like, I think if anything, he's a suitable candidate to be brought up to above average level intelligence, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that then you get into all sorts of ethical questions, which they try to get into a little bit between him and his dad, Indian Dennis Farina.
Yep, Brian George, who's an excellent actor. I think he's very good in this. I think that the show is always, as we say, always rewarded when they bring on good guest stars to come in.
Yeah, and I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. He's great every time he shows up. But yeah, like, because I mean that's the essential ethical question, right? Where it's like, well, he had some sort of learning disability, which I didn't mean to belittle by saying he was a dumbass. I apologize.
I think they went over the top in making him seem like he seems like he is a non-functional person. Yeah, the way that they're describing him. Yeah.
But at the same time, though, it's like they still made a decision for him, which you could argue that maybe he couldn't have made that decision, but they chose to change him without asking him about it or whatever. And, that's, even though they did bring him up to a high level of intelligence that he wasn't at, it's still, I like the scene where he gets into the argument with his dad and he's like, I'm your father. And he's like, no, you were my father until you turned me into a monster.
Right.
Which is, I think it's an interesting thing to consider, is that you are now changing him into something that is no longer technically your son, and what that does and doesn't mean.
Yeah.
I guess it is a shame that they have all of these discussions in like the span of 10 minutes at the end.
I feel his mother makes the best point about it when he's arguing about why they didn't do it, and she makes the pretty convincing case, I think, that it's difficult for parents to be watching their child go through this and them feeling responsible for it and everything like that. And I think there was a whole lot that they could have... There was a lot of ethical stuff to explore in this one, but there's 18 minutes left when the parents start talking to the hologram about it, and that's just not enough time to sort through everything that they want to go through. But like,
is there is there an instance where there's a character who has gone from this, mental deficiency through some sort of genetic mutation or enhancement, not of their own making, come out the other end and been totally fine with it? Because honestly, if we're being completely honest, that also is an option where he knows what they did to him, and he's like, frankly, I'm kind of happy they did it because I'd rather be this guy than the other guy.
Right.
There are two sides to that equation. It's not necessarily right or wrong, or I guess you could make that decision up for yourself.
Well, I think that they try to make it a tough decision for Bashir because they make it illegal for this kind of manipulation to happen in the Star Trek universe. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I mean by dated. Like, to me, I feel that, would you agree that like the reaction to this nowadays, I feel I watched this with a modern eye, and I'm kind of surprised that Starfleet considers this to be something so illegal that they'll jail you for.
Yeah.
When he's turned out to be a pretty flagship doctor, in terms of a Star Trek doctor, he's up there, he's doing a lot of things. He's getting his research published. He's doing a lot of frontier medicine and all that stuff that they talk about. And I feel like they have to make it dramatic just by making it illegal, and that's the reason he's holding this secret with them when there isn't much conflict outside of that. Like, I don't really buy him being upset with his parents for not asking him or like not letting him grow up to be anything, because they've already painted him in the script as like he's in rough shape as a 6-year-old kid. Like there's not. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of potential for development. I mean, if a 6-year-old can't tell the difference between a cat and a dog is like an astounding thing to leave in the script, unless you want to hammer home how disabled he was at that point. But I don't know. I feel like I don't know where I would have drawn the ethical question about this, like what they would be arguing about. I don't really have a good idea for why Bashir would be angry, unless at some point you also introduce some kind of weakness that this had given him at the same time, and then maybe you have something, but I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it falls under one of those things similarly to like cybernetic enhancements and stuff like that, where we watch Discovery and we see everybody with these cybernetic prostheses and stuff, and we're like, well, they never did that in Star Trek, so why are they doing it now? It's like, well, yeah, but they never really talked about it. Mm-hmm. But you would assume that stuff is probably happening. Like the level of technology that they're fucking around with on these shows, like willy-nilly, would imply that they can do stuff like this, and probably do.
Yes.
And the same with the eugenics thing, where it's like, there is let's put it this way. The way, the ease at which they heal pretty much every malady on Star Trek, and have always healed maladies in Star Trek, it is not a long reach for me to assume that they can probably do this stuff willy-nilly at any point.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, well, yeah, it was obviously you've got this problem in your brain, so we'll just genetically mutate your brain and now it's fine. Like that, it doesn't surprise me that they do that stuff. I wonder how much of it is because I think the wording is probably different for it at this point, and definitely now, than it was in the 60s, where when you say eugenics, there is a very specific connotation to that, because you are only 20 years removed from World War II, where they were doing this shit in Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. For two very different negative effects. So I think when you are creating a character like Khan, and you are linking him to this, the character that he is, which is the, Ubermensch, as you said earlier, and you use the word eugenics, there is a very negative connotation to that. So I don't know if they've recalibrated going from 60s definition of eugenics to 90s definition of gene therapy, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
And again, ethically, I don't know where that line is. I mean, I don't practice any of those things. Despite what you might think, I don't hold a doctorate in genetic modification. But you know what I mean, though? I wonder if there's any sort of, like, they're keeping it an illegal thing because it's traditionally in the show an illegal thing, but they're basically doing stuff that goes up to the line every week on Star Trek.
Right.
So I don't know if there should have been some sort of recalibration of what that means. Because like what they did to Bashir, I would assume is not anywhere near what they did to Khan. Like whatever Khan's thing was, I assume it was different than what they did to Bashir. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe that's the point. Maybe that it's all of a piece and that's why it's illegal. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the Admiral states that they just don't want it to potentially ever happen again. I think from like the modern perspective where we've been going through a couple decades of like genetic manipulation and stuff like that, and CRISPR now makes the news, and that Chinese scientists cured HIV virus in those twins that were born through genetic engineering and everything like that, or he claims he did anyway.
Excuse me.
I feel it's just kind of a dated examination of it. It feels like something that maybe Discovery would actually maybe be better at this point. You're like bringing it up to date, I guess, with what's going on. It feels very much of a silly kind of holdover where they're like, well, we took this person and we basically healed him from a position that no one seemed to be happy with. Like he wasn't happy with it. His parents weren't happy with it. And they brought him up to a new, just sort of a new level. I guess I might have kind of a flippant attitude towards genetic engineering anyway. I guess the other point would be like, do you think things would change if they had done this to him as an embryo? Does that make things different? Or is it because he was a 6-year-old that things are weird? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's a weird distinction where if you're doing it to an embryo, then you are actively manufacturing something or someone. Whereas if you did it to a 6-year-old, you're just like fixing them. And I'm using that in quotes. Like obviously, you know, people with mental illnesses like that don't necessarily need to be quote unquote fixed, obviously.
But if they had this technology, they could be fixed. Right. Yeah. What do you think?
I think that's where the weird gray area comes as to what are we talking about? Are we talking about eugenics, which is usually thought of like in a breeding mentality, or something like what they do here, which is more of a fixing a problem, a perceived problem?
That's interesting. So would you? I guess I can pick at that. Are you more or less, which of these outcomes, you seem to think that once the kid is born, using manipulation on them is more ethical than genetically manipulated?
I'm not trying to make a stance either way on this. Don't try to get me on the record doing that shit. But I think there might be a perceived difference depending on where you're coming at it from.
Huh. Yeah, I guess I have a hard time seeing the downside, sort of.
Yeah.
Because if you were to tell me that like your genetic screening got to a point where you could predict genetic issues pre-birth, I think fixing them is obviously a positive. I guess the more ethical problem is whether or not enhancing intelligence is appropriate. And I think people have a better argument there about like whether or not you're augmenting something that's there or you're just fixing a problem. But even with the intelligence augmenting, like I think you can have like an ethical problem with it out of some kind of fear of it happening. But if you were a parent and you were guaranteed 100% ability to double your child's intelligence before they were born, I don't think any parent would not take that. I'd have a hard time. The people who declined it would really have to explain to me why they wouldn't do that. If you were guaranteed that this was going to work, and it wasn't, you can almost think of it not even as a medical procedure. It's like a genie wish or something.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that? And I guess that's the problem. And maybe Star Trek deals with it effectively by saying, well, if you do that, you end up with Khan, Noonien, Singh, and we get World War III. But at the same time, I don't know. That just seems like a slippery slope argument almost that I don't really buy into. And I think that the show itself doesn't do a good enough job of explaining why they shouldn't do this outside of the fact that, well, it's canon that it's a bad idea.
Well, you know, I wonder if part of the way that they were trying to address that, not super specifically, is by the way that they characterize his dad, where they kind of characterize him as a bit of like not a scam artist, but like kind of looking for a leg up, you know?
Yeah. Used car salesman, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, a president. And I wonder if the idea there is to kind of imply that maybe they juiced him up more than it needed to be. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, we have this technology where we can make your son smarter. And it's like, all right, well, I mean, if we really turn the dial up on this, then that could be good for everybody involved. That kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
In which case, yeah, then it's not as based out of the goodness of your heart and the benefit of your son as one might think. And I guess, where do you draw the line? Do you say, well, just bump him up to a 6? Well, just bump him up to a 7. Like what's an
appropriate level of augmentation?
When do you how much steroids do you need before it's no longer fair to play the game?
Yeah. So what do you? I think maybe the script is a little bit confused about his father's motivations too, although I might just be wrong about that. So what do you think? To me, it's clear that his mother did this because she felt guilty about how Bashir turned out as a child. And she's the one that makes that case to him. I'm a little less clear about what the father thinks, because the script mostly focuses on the fact that he's very proud of his creation at that point. Like he's very proud of what Bashir has become, which makes Julian Bashir uncomfortable. And that's the conflict between the two of them.
Right.
However, by the end of it, it seems that his father's intentions were more noble, and it's more just his character flaw that he likes to brag about things like that. So I don't really know. Like if they had gone harder on the fact that he was doing this just because he was getting off on people being really impressed with his son, that would have been more interesting. But I don't think the script goes there 100% because he's a good guy by the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, that would just make him too much of a shitty, I don't think you get that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't think you get that resolution at the end, obviously, where between the two of them, if he's like, I really like the idea of that conflict where, his dad is very proud of the son that he manufactured, which makes Julian pissed off because he's like, you weren't proud of me when I was just a normal kid.
Right.
And I like that. It's a very interesting approach to that kind of thing, a father and son story as far as genetic mutation is involved or manipulation. But yeah, they do kind of come around on it at the end there. And could it have been a darker ending where the father has been doing this because he's proud of all the stuff that it's got, and maybe you even see a little bit of like he's gotten some benefit out of Julian being this way. And then the Starfleet learns at the end, but Starfleet decides to prosecute the father, but he goes out on the lam about it. Like he's not willing to go to jail for it, but Starfleet acknowledges that they're going to hold his father responsible and not Dr. Bashir responsible. You know what I mean? Yeah, I guess you could.
It's not as heartwarming and it's sort of weirder, but I'm looking for any kind of reason why we should care about this dilemma in this episode, and I'm not getting it from the science itself. So I'm trying to find like a character motivation, and I don't really find it between any of them.
Yeah. Like you would prefer if it was like he's selling merchandise based on his son or something like that.
Right. He's selling branded Teespring account t-shirts, or he got his, I don't know. He got like jobs or job opportunities from it, or he's benefited from the research that Bashir has been doing, or even just bragging about it, something like that. And they kind of go that way early on, where that's the conflict between them. But as we say, by the end of it, he flips pretty quickly into, I'm going to protect my son from everything that we've done. And the entire conflict that we've been told is between them and why they can't let the secret out and everything, it turns out to not be really all that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's fair. They do really kind of undercut the importance of it and how exactly against the law it actually is.
Right.
By the end there, where it's like, it's not legal, but it's like a lax pot law, basically, where it's like, well, you can't really buy it, but if you get caught with it, it's not that big of a deal.
And at the end, he's talking about the jail cell he's going to go is like the one that Paulie goes in Goodfellas. It's like everyone just kind of walks in and out, and they're making pasta all day. Yeah. It's like it's 2 years in minimum
security prison from The Simpsons that just has the revolving door at the front gate.
That's kind of my That's my real problem with it. I feel it's just it's an idea that they really could have done something with, and you can kind of go, especially if the series is going to go in a darker route. I think that you have places to go with that, and it feels very flimsy on all levels. And I think the Rom and Lita thing tying into it feels even particularly kind of flimsy. They waste an awful lot of time on talking about Louis Zimmerman's EMH program, which is odd because people would probably have been seeing Voyager at this point, and you don't need all this explanation about this stuff. Did you think anything about the EMH? Or yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, to jump off that, I was thinking how it would be. It would be a nice. Well, first of all, I thought the double film stuff was great. Like shooting him two Bashirs and stuff, I thought it looked really good, especially the one where he touches his own face.
Yep.
Which on closer view, you can tell he's positioned in a way so there is an arm not connected to the actor whose name I forget, reaching up to touch the face.
Okay.
But I thought that stuff looked really good. But I was thinking it would have been a nice parallel to the story that they were telling if Robert Picardo played Zimmerman in maybe he does actually. Maybe I'm not that familiar with Voyager.
He is. It's interesting. His performance this is the first time we've ever seen the real Zimmerman and not the EMH version. You can actually see it in the little scene where the EMH program exists in this one. It's much more nervous than, which is more like the Doctor on Voyager. And he is much more confident and arrogant as the real person. Yeah.
Well, because I was going to say it would be interesting if they did it the opposite of that. Because I don't totally remember the Doctor, but I remember the Doctor from First Contact, and he is kind of a nervous guy.
Yep.
But like this idea of he used himself as the beta test for this thing, which allowed him to then program a version of himself that was better than he actually was, like that kind of thing.
That would have been neat. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have rather they did that than, have him just hit on Lita for 40 minutes. But
right.
Have him come in and just be like a total shitheel with obvious issues that he then chose to eliminate by being able to create the perfect version of himself.
Yeah, and you can highlight the sort of I don't know if there's a hypocrisy there, but it's like an audience is much more willing to go along with him manipulating himself in a virtual form of himself as opposed to a real child or a person like that. And I think you could almost make the argument at this point that the EMHs and Data are their own life forms. I think the show has made that point. Obviously, for Data, it has at least. But so, is it wrong for Zimmerman to genetically manipulate his program? So, genetically, but to like artificially increase his program's capabilities and stuff like that. I think that would have been a neat way to tie it in.
He also just like loves gossip because as soon as Bashir was like, "Hey, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. Just do me a favor, don't call my parents." And he's like, "Yeah, no problem. I'm going to call Bashir's parents." And then once he finds out the truth about the genetic thing, he's like, new information I can take to Starfleet. Like it's very. I mean, he obviously doesn't do that, but he's definitely in it for the gossip.
And for the
also, why did he have to bring like the reason that I felt that way is because he's like, please don't talk to my parents, and he's like, yeah, no, I won't talk to your parents. I'm going to bring them to the station.
Yes.
Where like they could have everything that they had to do. He could have done that over like a view screen phone call or something. But no, he actually flies them to the ship.
It's a long con. And I'm also surprised that Bashir's parents made to keep the secret for so long when they are very loudly talking in a sickbay to Bashir about what they're like, don't worry about us, son. We'll never tell anyone your secret. We'll never speak aloud in a strange place about your thing. Even if they're not talking to a hologram of Bashir, it's still, they're talking very loudly in a very a public area of the station.
Yeah, just as a kind of like a final note on that whole thing too, is I don't love it. At least they wrapped this up and like this is what the story was about, this whole secret and everything. But I don't love it when they do this thing where you've got a character talking to another character about the quote unquote secret. That's something that's never even been hinted at before, and just the fact that they're talking, abstractly about this secret that's very important. That's me. That's what you're supposed to care about. And it's like, well, I mean, I didn't know that he had a secret before that. And you, I don't know. I just don't love that stuff as far as a way to get across those plot devices. It's on par for me as Georgiou being like, well, she doesn't know that you killed her parents, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, and you're talking about when Bashir is talking to his parents in person.
Yeah, just at the beginning when they're talking around it, and he's like, you can't tell the secret.
Oh, right. For sure. Yes.
What secret, son? We would never tell the secret. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like that stuff.
Yeah, you have to speak vaguely while specifically highlighting to the audience that there is a secret. Yeah. You have to still.
It's
be
like I
vague.
hate. This is just a general pet peeve. When there is something like this in the character's history, and you always have that scene where someone is like, "It's been 20 years since it happened, Chris. Mm-hmm. How can you still feel this way?" And it's like, what do you? What is it? What do you mean? Like, if you were talking to a real person, right? Let's say you had a friend who 20 years ago was in a car, was driving drunk, and ended up killing their girlfriend or something, or or whatever. Some crazy shit like that.
Is that a dig at not Bobby Kennedy, Ted Kennedy?
No, actually, as I started saying that, I was like, is that a Kennedy thing? Anyway, no, but like, say you've got this like horrible secret or event or something that people aren't supposed to know. But even if they do know about it, it's even better if it is a wide known thing in the world of the story, because it's like you wouldn't talk to that person and be like, I noticed you've had a problem going in cars without a seatbelt ever since it happened. Right. Like, you just don't talk that way, It always rings false to me is when you're trying to bring that stuff up. There's got to be a better way to do it. Yeah.
They do it a lot with the death of a child in movies. Like they hint, they'll bring it up in a sort of a. They try to make it sound subtle, but it's like you're still just being reminded that they're bringing up the death of a child to someone, and that person knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, especially if it's like in a psychiatrist scene or something like that, where they're like, I haven't been the same since it happened. It's like, I know that you're trying to write this in a way that you're dancing around it, but you're actually bringing more attention to the fact that you are trying to get people to care about it, and it feels very artificial when you do that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think we're done with this one. So we're going to take a break. We're going to play an audio clip. Me and Clay are going to come back. We're going to give our final thoughts and read some patron thoughts for Dr. Bashir, I presume.
I should have told her how I felt.
Thank the Nagus that you didn't. Remember what happened with Nog's mother? Yeah. Don't want to think about her, do you? Let me refresh your memory. You signed a standard 5-year marriage contract with Trinadore's father because you wanted to have a child, a simple, everyday business deal. But then, you fell in love with your wife and wanted to extend the contract. And you were so in love that you never bothered to read the extension before signing it. So in the end, her father swindled you out of all of your money. Trinadore left you for a richer man. And you got stuck with Nog. Hooray for romance.
Lita is not Trinadora.
She's a female, Rom. And the one constant in the universe is females are trouble.
Okay, so if you've enjoyed the content today, you can support the show at patreon.com/thepenskyfile. That's patreon.com/thepenskyfile. A couple dollars a month, you get extra stuff. You get more podcasts, and it's a great way to support the show and keep the content coming that you enjoy. And as always, I'd like to... I don't do this. I'm going to change the shifting of this from the very end to here, just so I remember I have to give the shout out to our Captain tier patrons: Stephen Cobb, Sean, Captain Quark, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, Jay Stanley, David K., Nick Sergey, Nathan Elliott, Michael Pond, Matthew Cutler, Will Yates, Matt Flores, Samuel Custer, Santos, Gonzalez, Robert Cummins, Andrew Cherlog, Spinobi, Russ Graham, Deckers Bastiani, Bradley Killens, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Ben Douglas, Cal Bear, Joy Mango, Tarek Latif. Thank you guys for supporting the show. And if anyone else is interested in supporting the show, it's patreon.com/thepenskyfile. So, Clay, we'll read some patron thoughts before we head out of here about this one. Dr. Bashir, I presume. Zam Nuclear Wessel says,
any of the thoughts that are less than intelligent, I reserve the option to genetically modify them into more intelligent comments.
I requested IQ test results before they were allowed to post for this one, so we should be good with this. Mm-hmm. Now we know how Bashir was able to drag that power cell from the shuttle by himself back and ignore the battle to the strong. Do you remember that callback, Clay?
Not really, but it does bring up a question where, I mean, there's no indication that he is like super strong.
No, there's not.
They only paid for the brain package.
Yeah, or maybe it's you get a little bit of a lesser punishment because Khan was super strong, even though Kirk fought him hand to hand on numerous occasions. We were told he was super strong. And
I'm surprised that given the time that this episode was out, that they didn't draw more of an allusion to the steroid scandal in baseball.
That's true.
Because isn't that kind of what we're dealing with here more than the Khan stuff? It's like he has a... Khan was like they built a Superman and the Superman ran amok and started World War III. Mm-hmm. We're dealing with a doctor who's just smarter than other people and got a leg up in his life and profession because they augmented his ability to do his job.
Yeah, the baseball thing is interesting. This might be just before that scandal came out.
Oh, is it before? Okay.
Was the McGuire thing in 98? I want to say that was McGuire 98.
I think you're right.
I can't look it up, but this would have been right before, but there must have been hints because their heads or their bodies were swelling and their heads were shrinking at this point.
Other things were shrinking too.
Is there a way to tie this into baseball? I mean, ultimately there's no it's just the illegality of it. Like the steroids, you're killing yourself by taking it. Bashir has not suffered any damage outside of the potential illegality of it through doing it.
I mean, it would have been much better if they did tie it into baseball. And so Cisco was like, I remember when this happened 300 years ago in the Major League Baseball of the United States.
Instead of... at the end of the episode, O'Brien should be like, we'll just play home run derby, and Bashir is just crushing fucking dingers.
Oh, wait, but I guess he does have he's super good at darts.
He's super good at darts, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe he did get the whole Khan package. I don't know.
Well, he certainly got better hand-eye. He doesn't seem stronger, but he is enhanced outside of his brain, and that he has like good hand-eye and stuff. He's a good surgeon and things like that, I guess.
Is it like, when you get this done to your kid, is it like getting cable? Where,
right.
It's like, there's basic cable, which is going to get you TNT and TBS, but, if you want the home shopping net, well, not the home shopping. Like
I was thinking, it's more like a la carte Amazon.
Yeah, if you want ESPN or NESN, then you got to pay more.
Yeah, well, the cable gives you all or nothing. I think it's like, how Amazon offers, like, you can now subscribe to CBS All Access and HBO through Amazon and just go to Amazon for it. It kind of feels like that. You'd have an a la carte menu about what you want for your kid to go through. What if you, If you had $500 and it cost $500 to enhance one trait, what trait would you enhance for your kid?
Well, where am I getting this done? First of all, for $500.
This is like Recall from Total Recall. There might be some downsides to it.
If I could enhance one thing for my kid, I don't know. What's wrong with him?
Nothing.
I guess the question here, based on the amount of money you just threw out, and your ambivalence toward doing this is, what did you use that $500 on, and which kid did you use it on?
I mentioned $500 just because it's not a super upgrade, I guess. Like, if they could slightly enhance something, having thought about it, like, I would, because we're speaking about like a somewhat minuscule increase, like intelligence, I don't think is that great, but if you could instill like a really strong work ethic, I think that compensates for intelligence in a lot of ways. Like if you made your kid like a little bit more like never going to give up and like always going to like try to finish this job, I think that could pay off in a way. Like I don't care about him jumping or like shooting a basketball or anything like that, but like if he just was in that way, it's not changing what he would want to do, but he would just be able to pursue what he wanted to do in a much a more willpowery way, I guess. Nothing's wrong with the kids, but that's like if I would do it to myself, that's what I would do.
See, that's interesting to me because, like, in this situation that you're presenting here, without something that is explicitly wrong or needs fixing, then isn't one really going to just choose something that they wish they could fix for themselves?
Probably, yes.
Because otherwise it's like, and 90% of the time it's probably going to be, make him be able to throw football really good.
Through a hula hoop at 50 yards.
Yeah. But like, because I was thinking about it, and the only thing as I was thinking, I was like, wait, all of these things that are going through my mind are like my own deep-seated personal issues with myself. Mm-hmm. Like which I don't want to pass on to a child.
Yes.
So I think it's difficult to do that until, you take the car for a spin and see what's what's not working right.
Well, would that have made Bashir's father better? If Bashir's father was showed to be a not super intelligent guy who like had a hard time holding down his jobs because he just couldn't hack the intelligence that was needed, would that have amplified it a little bit? What he did to his son?
I mean, isn't that kind of how they present him?
I don't. He doesn't seem dim to me though. He seems like he's kind of a con man. But
yeah, I don't know. Well, because I was actually thinking the other way. Like, what if his dad was super smart?
Oh, and he just wanted him to not be a disgrace to him.
Yeah, kind of. Like he wasn't living up to his father's potential, so his father, changed the game.
Yeah.
Which is much more of a darker way to do it, I guess.
I think it's more tragic the other way. If he just wants to do what's best for his son and his heart, but I guess we're now rehashing the episode, but...
Yeah, I guess it depends. If you want the happier ending, I think your way is probably what still gets you there. I think it's tougher to reconcile the goodness of a smart dad with a less than smart kid who's just decides to make him more smart.
Right.
I think there's more of an issue there to be explored.
Yeah. And
anyway,
honestly, although we've learned is you just have to bribe the admissions, and you can get these kids into anything that they want, which is our timely way to date this podcast. The next comment, Andrew Cherlog says, Dr. Bashir, I presume. What the fuck? Really, what the fuck? Bashir has made so much progress as a character for it all to be undone by making him a benevolent Khan. The series needed to come down after Purgatory Inferno, but this was not it. Matthew Ross.
Sorry, I just to go back for a second based on that. I said earlier that it makes him more interesting, and I think I might take that back because I think I agree with that comment. I don't think he needs this.
Okay.
I just, it does seem because it seems like something that they would do really early in the show just to bump him up and make him easier to write or more interesting to write when they have done so much with him already that, like I said, it doesn't really seem to change much. So why bother?
I don't think it changes things, but what I think it does is that, to me, you didn't watch. I watched the Dark Page episode of TNG with Dan, actually, who was the one who watched that. Where I don't know if you remember that episode. It's the one where Loxana Troy is revealed that she had another daughter besides Deanna Troy, who died as a child. And
I don't remember that. The
reason that Loxana is so overprotective and helicopter mothering over Deanna is because she's trying to prevent that tragedy from happening again. So, but I think this is kind of similar in that they're not adding anything, but I think they're giving a good reason for why Bashir acts the way that he does.
That's fair.
Because if you go back all the stuff we've done, he's kind of like trying to improve himself. He feels a little bit, when he started on the show, he was a little bit naive, as they talk about in their interviews with him and stuff like that. And he's trying too hard. He is eager to please. He did that. He had that weird thing that we always talked about. For some reason, he failed his testing at the academy. Remember that?
Yeah.
That feels like they were trying to connect all these dots, and they came up with, he knew he was augmented at the start, and he's overcompensating, trying to make it seem like that's not the reason that he's doing everything. Like, he's trying to be beyond that.
Yeah.
Does that work?
I buy into that. I reverse my position again.
Have a backbone, damn it, or we need to augment your spine, I think.
I know. I need to augment my decision-making process.
Well, there's more negative comments coming, so we'll get through these. Matthew Ross says, I hate this episode. I feel they ruined Bashir with his augment story, and it makes no sense. Rom's teenage feelings for Lita are ridiculous, as is the competition with Zimmerman. I think a junior high romance would be better. Quark's hiring of Lita for the obvious is very Ferengi. The EMH tie-in was interesting and actually shows a bright point of Voyager, Robert Picardo, but why the hell is it now? In the series 1, season 1 to 2 feeling here? And of course, the parents come to the station. Isn't there war on somewhere? So why even do that at all? The multiple perspective interviews with the crew are trying to be humorous, meh. But again, why the hell would you have parents be the charlatans at all? Couldn't leave well enough alone. Their interactions didn't feel like parent and child, as you feel the actors are similar in age. It's just a horrid story idea trying to masquerade as a serious issue. Kyle Barrett says, from the beginning of the series, Bashir has been the character most embodying Roddenberry's futuristic ideals, portrayed as the perfect specimen of the franchise's utopic future, so much so that they now want one of him on every ship. So the idea to literally turn him into the perfect specimen is fascinating, and it highlights the falsities behind this parasitical society in an interesting and very DS9 way. But even away from all of that, this is a very enjoyable and funny episode. It's a little disappointing that once the Bashir reveal happens, Zimmerman pretty much disappears. Do we know if Zimmerman is still going to go ahead with Bashir as the LMH by the episode's end? Did I miss a line somewhere? Anyway, it's nice to hear a Cockney accent in Trek for a change, but what does Lita see in Rom? I guess she just likes little troll aliens that look vaguely like David Duchovny, according to Clay at least. I still don't see the resemblance.
It's there, man.
Ollie McLaughlin says, the conceit of Bashir having hidden his talents for so long is a stretch. It seemed like they missed having a Spock or Data around, a character who had good reason to always know the answer. Having said that, I appreciated seeing a dysfunctional family. Benjamin is an amazing father, and while the O'Briens have a quirky relationship, they do genuinely seem to love each other. Seeing a family that's effed up was a nice change of pace. Will Yates, it's just like I always thought. It was never Jerry's fault. However, seriously, I doubt that this was all planned from the start of the series, but looking back on Bashir's hubris, relentless pursuit of Dax, and staying out of professional sports, you could argue that his enhancements were always there and he actively avoided anything that might let his secret out. Neil Brennan says, an interesting wrinkle added to the character, an interesting mustache on his father. And that's it. That's it for the comments. Thank you guys for leaving your comments. Patrons, if you support the show on patreon.com, you can go there and leave comments about upcoming episodes. There's a post. You can click on the little featured tag that's called Patron Comments, and it'll bring you right there. Leave your thoughts. It's good to read them.
I'm shocked that we talked this long about this episode.
I am too. I felt we had to kind of go on a little bit of a side trip into what we think about genetic manipulation, but I think the episode kind of turned out a little bit differently, but I think it was still a decent conversation.
Now that we're both exposed for having questionable viewpoints on eugenics, I guess, which...
What's the... Yeah, I feel that genetic CRISPR technology, like my kids are probably going to be having to make these decisions. It's not far away at this point. Yeah. And maybe Star Trek is not the best starting point for these kind of ethical discussions, but they are trying, I suppose. And I feel maybe it's a little bit of a dated episode just in that regards, but they are trying to say something about something. I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. All the reasons that we talked about. I think it's perfectly functional. I don't think the script is a particularly good structure to it, and I think that they waste a lot of what they were trying to do, but I think at the same time, they don't have a lot to say about it. I don't know if the writers really know what they want to say about this, so they kind of shuttle everything off to the end, have a couple character interaction scenes where people feel emotions, and then we call it a day, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's a season 5 too. Are we in season 5?
Yes, we are.
Season 5. I think it's a season 5 too. I think it's an overall series 3.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Where it's like, it's fine. It could be better, I think. Given the stuff that's been around it, it probably should be better. But I still think it's better than most of the bad stuff in the first few seasons.
Yeah. Do you want me to give this a 3 or a 2 on your? I understand like what you're.
I would give it a 3.
You'd give it a 3, yeah. I do understand what you mean though about it. It's yeah, I don't know. It just kind of is lacking a little bit in some ways, and it's interesting for what it is, and then seems a pretty big divide in the patrons too about whether or not people like this or don't like this change.
The only thing I want to know is, do Lita and Rom stay together?
Well, we have two seasons to get through, and then
That's all I care about at this point. Dominion War, get that shit out of here. I want to know, do they stay together? Because I think someone deserves to be happy on this show.
It's true. What did you we didn't talk about it. What did you think of the interview scene? People there was 2 comments here. One person liked it, one person didn't. I don't remember who it was. What did you think of that? Because I thought it was unique for Star Trek. They don't do that very often.
You talking about when they were going person to person talking about Bashir?
Yeah, Zimmerman is asking them questions and they're cutting between the responses of like Sisko and Jake and everything. Yeah.
It reminded me of that Dax episode a little bit, where they were inhabiting, where the different versions of
facets. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I thought it was all right. I mean, it didn't really stand out to me one way or another.
Oh, okay.
Not as much as the scene where Quark is just actively trying to cockblock his brother because he don't think he'll work as hard or something.
I liked the one Ferengi moment I liked was there. how Ferengi marriage works, which is just like a limited time contract. They signed like a 5-year contract, and then they sort of renegotiated at that point. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. First time we've ever heard about Nog's mother, who is that person that he married, apparently.
That's right.
Yep. That's it, guys. Thank you very much. We're both going to give this one a 3. That's it. And thank you very much for listening. All the social media links are down below: Facebook, Twitter, Discord. Support the show on patreon.com/the Pensky File. There's a couple other links you can support the show on if you wanted to go to PayPal or the Teespring store. And then after that, please just recommend the show to other people. If you're on the internet, if you're on Reddit or something, people who are looking for a Star Trek podcast, this is pretty much the one that I would appreciate you recommend. Any of the others, you're obviously free to recommend as well. But just try to spread the word as casually and coolly as you possibly can. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
No. Yeah, if you're not on the internet, get one of those CDs that you put in your computer, and it'll get you on the internet.
AOL.com.
Yeah. Do you remember my favorite commercial from back then was there was a commercial aimed at older people who didn't have computers, and that was like, do you wish that you were on the internet but you don't have a computer? Well, it's never been easier to buy a computer. Mm-hmm. Just go to www.buyacomputer. I'm like, dude, you're trying to sell them. They don't have fucking computers.
You're going way too fast. They can't hear you, and they don't have a computer.
You can't go to the website to buy a computer if they don't have a computer.
Got to get one of those smartphones that these kids are talking about, I suppose. I know.
No, this was like in
1995, yeah. It was the same way you used to get 7 AOL discs in the mail every single day. The AOL was just bombarding us with CD-ROMs to get us signed up for
do those still work? Like, do they exist, and B, do they still work?
AOL's defunct, I think, right?
Is it completely dead now?
I think so, yeah. I
what
think
did those things even do, now that I think about it? Judging by the way that internet works now, anyway.
It must have installed the program. You couldn't download the installer, I guess. So
you can't download, like much like the computer thing. Yeah. You can't download something if you don't have to use the internet. You don't have the internet.
The old people needed computers mailed to them to sign up for buyacomputer.com.
Yeah,
then it would have worked.
Yeah. Technology.
It was a different time. They were only just getting into the ethics of gene editing at that point, so who can blame them for not understanding how to get...
Now disk drives barely exist anymore.
That's it. We're done. Thank you very much, guys. Dr. Bashir is over. Dr. Bashir, I presume. We both give it a 3. We're back with A Simple Investigation as our next episode. And until then, Discovery continues to be covered. It's almost done. We've got a couple more episodes before the season 2 wraps up with Discovery. Real Ripe and Real Rotten is going to be out there. Badass continues to be out there. Radio Star Murders comes out every week on Wednesdays. You can check that out if you like music videos. That's about it. Guys, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.